Do you need a dose of inspiration and hope? Stay tuned for Reach Out and Live. Welcome to Reach Out and Live, a program of music, scripture, and sermon brought to you each week by the many viewers and members of First-Plymouth Church, Lincoln, Nebraska. Hi, my name's Jim, minister here at First-Plymouth. Now, when we worship together, there's a chance to grow in love and hope. I pray that it may be so for you. The congregation is ready. Let's worship.
Now hear this word from 1 Corinthians. Often this text is read at a gravesite. Hear these words. Look, I will tell you a mystery. We will not all die, but we will all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For this perishable body must put on imperishability, and this mortal body must put on immortality. When this perishable body puts on imperishability, and this mortal body puts on immortality, then the saying that is written will be fulfilled. Death has been swallowed up in victory. So where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?
Earlier this week,
The front desk of the church mixed up the meeting schedule, and they sent to my office a family that was seeking a baptism, but I thought I was having a meeting with a family that needed a funeral. And I was amazed how long it took me to realize the mistake. Because I was asking about their loved one, and we were talking about life and hope, and then all of a sudden it became apparent they weren't seeking an internment, they were seeking an immersion. Do you know, it's like this at church all the time, this mixture of sorrow and joy, and people at the best moments of their life and people really struggling. Every time we gather, like right now, there's that amazing blend of people in a rough place, or people just feeling joy and happiness. It's all here. And so, my friends, listen. You will hear something this hour, something said or something sung or even something felt that you need in whatever place you are, because the Holy Spirit will make that happen. I think there were 5 people that were key to propelling Christianity itself in the 20th century. 5 people who especially deepened our understanding of the faith itself. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Mother Teresa, Billy Graham, Dr. Martin Luther King, and the 5th one I will tell you shortly. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran minister in Germany during the rise of Nazism, which was beginning to infect human brains with these ghastly ideas. Pastor Bonhoeffer decided he must actively resist. And he was arrested by the Gestapo, thrown into prison. It was from prison that he wrote these beautiful letters, very much like the Apostle Paul wrote us those beautiful letters from prison. Just days before the war would end, Hitler had him hung. Christians now forever have been inspired by his sacrificial heart and his courage. And he's reminded us that to be Christian is not just to be good, but to be on the side of good. To not just be a good person, but resist anything that tries to subvert the good. Mother Teresa, who served the poor in Calcutta, she looked like Jesus walking among us. And she reminded us that to be Christian is to seek to reduce the suffering in our world. To be Christian, to be religious, is to come alongside those who are struggling, the most vulnerable. Billy Graham, who out of this desire to bring Christ to as many human hearts as possible, held these crusades. He was indefatigable year after year trying to bring Christ into your heart, because he knew that Christ can transform us. He knew that Christ can transform our desires. Human beings are driven by their desires. And that when you come to Christ, your desires themselves are changed. You begin to desire fervently the most wholesome and noble and beautiful things. Dr. Martin Luther King, he knew that if he resisted racism head on, he would be killed. He knew that for years. But he was a man of such faith, it's what he had to do. And he taught us that Christianity must always be that moral arc that bends towards justice, no matter how long it takes, no matter how much work. And now the fifth most influential Christian of the 20th century. Perhaps, anyway. C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, if only because of the children's books he wrote, the Chronicles of Narnia. It was C.S. Lewis that understood how important imagination is to the Christian faith. And with incredible skill, he transposed Christianity into the imaginative realm with that amazing Christ figure, Aslan, that beautiful lion. He went on to write some 32 books. And with that combination of imagination and extraordinary intellect, helped people grasp Christianity itself. We've taken to choosing a book at First-Plymouth during Lent to especially study. This year we've chosen C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce. That is a very unfortunate title. It was the publisher's title. The working title that C.S. Lewis had was Who Goes Home? And it's a book about trying to journey home to heaven. It's about a journey from hell to heaven. But the publisher, being clever by a half too much, knew of the William Blake poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Earth, and thought they would riff off that and call this The Great Divorce. But now it just sounds like a book about a failed marriage. It's not. It's an incredible book about how human beings, that the journey of the human life itself is from hell to heaven. Oh, let me tell you just a bit more about C.S. Lewis. When he was 17, he went to study at Oxford, already showing an unusual mind. But by 19, the Great War had broken out, and he was in the trenches in France at 19. He was sent home after some shrapnel wounds. But what he saw in the trenches was a greater wound, and that left seeds of despair in him. He finished Oxford, became a professor of Renaissance literature. He was an atheist. You know, my friends, you might not be sure if you believe in God. You might be agnostic or seeking or atheist. But remember, you are an immortal soul, and in your long journey, whatever beliefs you hold at this moment, things can change. C.S. Lewis was on a walk with J.R.R. Tolkien. On that beautiful Addison's Walk by Oxford, if you've been there, it's a tree-lined path, it's gorgeous. And it was on that walk that J.R.R. Tolkien opened up C.S. Lewis to the power of the imagination. And he taught C.S. Lewis that the fact we can even imagine a spiritual realm is the first clue that there is a spiritual realm. C.S. Lewis went on to become the greatest Christian imagination of all. We're all on a long journey. So his book, The Great Divorce, it begins with a man standing in a long line. A really long line. You know nothing about the narrator in this book. It tells you nothing. Suddenly the narrator is just a man standing in this long line. And the people kind of bicker at each other in this long line. And it's in a town called Greytown, where everything lacks vibrancy and intensity. And suddenly you begin to realize you're in hell. This is a masterstroke. To describe hell as a long line, an endless queue. Oh! During COVID, I had to renew my license at the DMV. And during COVID, they were socially distancing, so you had to stand 6 feet apart. So the line went out the building, around the parking lot, and out onto the street, this endless queue at the DMV. I remember thinking, I'm in hell. I even think I thought, save me, Jesus. Hell as a long line, where bickering at each other takes place. Just recently, I stopped by the grocery store to just pick up a banana, and I got in line at the register, and there were 3 carts packed with food in front of me, and I was standing there holding the banana. And I thought for sure somebody would let me go forward. And I began to think ill of the people in front of me. All 3 carts did their full checkout as I held my banana. I began to judge them. In C.S. Lewis's story, as they're in this long line, there's just acrimony and judgment and putting each other down. And hell isn't this scene of amazing violence or anything, but once in a while somebody will punch somebody else in the mouth. But there's no devil figure in this story at all. There's no lurid versions of torture. It's just a gray town that spreads out forever. It's slightly raining the whole time. The stores look half closed. And get this, in C.S. Lewis's version of hell, people begin to just isolate themselves. In his hell, you can have any kind of home you want. Whatever home you imagine, the biggest mansion or whatever, you can have it. But people keep choosing to have their home further and further apart from one another. So hell is where people argue and bicker, divisions, put each other down. Hell is where you self-isolate, pull further away from community. See, C.S. Lewis wants you to imagine, are we at times creating hell on earth? So the people in this long line are getting on a bus that goes to heaven. And when they get to heaven, these angels or people they knew meet them, and the rest of the book is these conversations for the inhabitants of hell taking the bus ride to heaven with these heavenly inhabitants. And get this, everyone from hell could choose to stay in heaven if they want to. They're allowed to choose if they want to stay. But this book is made up of people who again and again choose not to be in heaven. When you're reading a C.S. Lewis book, any of his books, you have to remember that he has 3 key ideas that he's always orbiting, these 3 basic ideas. Number 1, that you are an immortal soul. Listen to what he says. There are no ordinary people. You have never met a mere mortal. nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal. And their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. Do you hear that? You are immortal. And for C.S. Lewis, the immortality of your soul is as much a moral category as a metaphysical one. Because you will never meet a mere mortal. Everyone whom you meet is an eternal soul. And so they should be encountered with a certain reverence, even an awe. For C.S. Lewis, when you believe people are immortal, it changes every encounter in your life. And it did for him. You know, he would return letters to anyone that wrote him because he thought, these are immortal souls. The second key idea in C.S. Lewis is of moral objectivity. Morals aren't something we make up. And morals aren't relative to whatever culture you're in or time or place or society. C.S. Lewis thought that modern thinkers like to grasp onto relativism, that, morals or ethics could be different based on your situation. For him, that's exactly wrong. That morals are objective, and they are the essence of what the human soul is about. These basic morals of honesty and love and forgiveness and mercy and justice. There's nothing more real than those morals. And thirdly, if you're ever reading C.S. Lewis, you have to understand when he thinks about Christianity, it's not some little special sphere of or it's not a set of books or a set of creeds or a set of rituals. It's not something over here. Christianity is completely comprehensive to him. Any truth in the world points you back to Christ. Any truth, any scientific truth, any truth you encounter is part of Christianity. Listen to this quote. I believe in Christianity as I believe a sunrise, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. Did you hear that? I believe in Christianity as I believe a sunset, not just because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. Christianity for him is what illumines everything else in life, gives it a vibrancy, a meaning. So holding those ideas in mind as you read this book, you start to realize that C.S. Lewis believes in your radical agency. You get to choose. And these people that are in hell, if they just chose heaven, they're welcome. And you begin to notice in all these encounters that this book details that there's one basic reason they're not choosing well. And it's egocentricity. And C.S. Lewis doesn't mean egocentricity by that you're all puffed up and think you're all that and that you're better than others. Egocentricity more is that you totally just believe your own perspectives. Whatever you think matters in life, you can only imagine that is truly what matters. You can't entertain other perspectives at all. You're trapped in your own ego, and you hold on to all the gripes and recriminations of your life because they're so important to you. They're part of who you are. And that's what egocentricity is. You can't let go of it. It's who you are, and it's what you think matters. They did me wrong. And you hold on to it. We're reading his book this Lent for these basic reasons. To remember, everyone you meet is an eternal soul. Stand with some reverence in their midst. And to remember that if you are going to walk along with Jesus, you have to begin to let go of that egocentricity the way we wrap ourselves up into our ideas, our perspectives, what I think matters in life, what my gripes, you have to begin to let go of that. And then remember that you get to choose. Every moment in your life, you get to choose the good and the wholesome and the kind. Every moment in your life, you have agency. You choose. And so, my friends, together as beloved community, let's choose well. Choose what is good.
It's wonderful that we could worship together. Do you know you could join our services live every Sunday morning at 9, 10:30, or 11:59 on Facebook, YouTube, or our website, and all of that is made possible by gifts from people like you. If you believe that an open-minded, loving congregation can help change the world, then consider making a donation. It will help us increase the love of God and neighbor in both Nebraska and the world. Last year, First-Plymouth Church, with your help, bought and forgave over $600,000 of medical debt for struggling families. The FP Just Neighbors initiatives help with the costs of laundry at local laundromats and help fill our neighbors' gas tanks at special volunteer events. And every month, First Plymouth members help feed the neighborhood by acting as a food drop location for the Lincoln Food Bank. There are so many ways you could help us help others. If you would like to join our Sunday live streams or just learn more about our church, go to firstplymouth.org or find us on Facebook and YouTube. And so now we have worshiped together, and it's not my hope that this has strengthened your grasp of doctrine or dogma or creed. Rather, it's my hope it has opened your heart to the mystery and love that is God, so that all together we can reach out and live.
Tune in again next week for another edition of Reach Out and Live.